NWA Championship Wrestling, May 31st, 1986. Everyone watched this show. There was, I don't think, any good wrestling on it. I don't care. There was a lot of good promos, and Tully Blanchard here in 1986 cut the best promo of 2016. Show began with clips of the Midnight Express attacking the James Gang and threatening or trying to unmask them, and we will come back to this later.
See, Vinny, when they finally played the actual footage, you thought it was so awesome. Mm-hmm. I just knew immediately. I didn't know who it was, but I knew they're going to unmask this guy, and it's not going to be one of the James boys. Now, granted, if you give me 1,000 years, I wouldn't have guessed who it was, because...
Who it was is frankly irrelevant.
No, it isn't. It is irrelevant, Vinny, because this man, they beat the Midnight Express. That's what led to them getting in the ring and jumping them.
I see, yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dusty Rhodes and Baby Doll joined the announce desk for a promo.
By the way, they announced this week the show is in stereo.
Oh, yes.
In stereo.
Cutting-edge technology. Dusty hyped up his title match in D.C. during the Great American Bash, and he denied knowing anything about the James Boys. Hector Guerrero and Raging Bull versus Thunderfoot and Bob Owens.
Your main man, Thunderfoot.
My main man, David Crockett. They were doing the most basic stuff ever. Hector would do a body press, and Thunderfoot would catch him, and for a second he'd teeter and totter and then go down. Crockett his life hung on every twist of momentum in this match. And every time the babyfaces hit a move, it was like he'd won the lottery all over again. Just going crazy for everything. I like where Owens took a backdrop where he landed feet first, then ass, then shoulders, then head.
That's the worst way to land.
Exactly the wrong way to do it.
Can somebody tell me what the theme song for Hector Guerrero and the Raging Bull really was?
It's a very happy mariachi tune.
Well, no, the way that they played it...
I see.
I mean, I could be wrong here, but the way that they played it made me think that this was a dub. And they just got generic mariachi music. I want to know if they played like La Bamba or something. It was 1986. What did they play here for these Mexicans? Hector looked exactly like Eddie Guerrero.
He did here.
It was creepy. And my dad.
And Raging Bull won with the flying burrito.
Stunned by the number of flying ass attacks we had in wrestling in 1986. It's such a phony move.
Yes.
I'm going to throw you into the ropes, and I'm going to jump in the air and bend over.
I'm going to jump in the air, turn around, and bend over, and you will run into my buttocks, and this will knock you down.
Yeah.
But in the 80s, apparently no one had a counter.
No, there was no counter to an ass in your face.
No. So I've heard. Arn Anderson got a promo hyping up the Great American Bash. He vowed the Four Horsemen would return and promised that Ole Anderson was on his way back.
You know, the show was only 54 minutes or something like that, but they were just going. This was another show. This was an example of a show where 90 minutes is a better length than 60, because the moment a match ended, they rushed someone in for a promo.
Yeah.
It was the quickest promo of all time, and then he rushed to something new.
I, at various times throughout this show, was 3 or 4 segments behind taking notes. It was difficult to keep up with. Showed footage of Ricky Morton wrestling Ric Flair when he was attacked by Tully and Arn. And the payoff to this was the Horseman holding Morton down as Flair hit knee drops to the back of Morton's head, driving his face into the mat and breaking his nose.
Shattering his nose.
Crushing his nose, I believe Ricky said. So then the Rock and Roll Express came out for a promo, by which I mean Ricky Morton came out for a promo and Robert Gibson came out and stood there.
Okay, God bless Robert Gibson. What the hell?
He brought nothing to the table.
He didn't do anything in the matches.
No.
I know this is not new information, okay? I've known this forever.
Yes.
But with each passing week, it's more and more glaring. Like, his buddy was attacked by Ric Flair. Ric Flair shattered his nose. Now, theoretically, with his nose shattered and his septum deviated, I mean, Ricky's voice could have been all fucked up. Where was Robert to step in one time and vow revenge for his buddy? Or to say one word? He didn't say a goddamn thing.
You know, in hindsight, it's become a cliche in wrestling when a tag team breaks up and you argue about which man will be more successful as a singles wrestler. You say one of them will be Shawn Michaels and the other will be Marty Jannetty. This is not fair.
No.
Marty Jannetty was seriously outclassing Robert Gibson. The question is to be who will be Ricky Morton and who will be Robert Gibson.
Again, nothing against Robert, but for years when the Rock and Roll Express was on the Observer Hall of Fame ballot. I remember when I was coming up, all I heard about, because I did a lot of tag team matches, and all of the old school guys, Buddy and Tim and Ed Moretti and the Colonel, all these guys, Buddy Rose. What do they all say? You've got to watch the Rock and Roll Express. Brian, you're a little baby face. Watch the Rock and Roll Express. Watch how they do tag matches. The best tag team wrestling you'll ever see. The Rock and blah, 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 blah. And so every time the Rock and Roll Express came up on the ballot, I was like, these guys have got to be in. All I hear about from these old wrestlers is, if you want to learn how to be a tag team babyface wrestler, you got to watch the Rock and Roll Express. Every year I would vote for them. Every year they wouldn't go in. Finally, they go in. Now, I'm watching all of this, and I'm like, should they really have gone in? It's one guy.
Can we retrograde and take them out?
I don't want to take them out, and I don't want to be that hard on Robert Gibson, because they were an awesome team. But really, I mean, every week it's just more and more
this was not
shocking how one-sided this was.
Yes, this is not a 50-50 split.
Not at all.
This may have been 90-10.
I used to think maybe like 70-30.
Yeah.
Now it's more like, seriously, 99-1.
Yes.
That's about where we're at right now.
You know, thinking about this, I've seen a lot of great Rock and Roll Express tag matches where they beat up Ricky Morton for a while and he tags in Robert Gibson to do a finish. Would it have been any worse if Ricky just made his own comeback? It may have been better.
I don't know.
So here he comes out. He's got the Mankind mask on to protect his crushed nose. He's got two black eyes behind the mask. And he says they crushed his nose, but his nose is a long way from his heart. He's going to make it an eye
What
for
a
an eye.
line.
He's going to make an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It was awesome.
A mullet for a mullet.
Well,
and Robert didn't say one word.
Didn't say nothing?
He didn't even say, you tell him, Ricky.
He didn't pound his fist into his palm.
No.
He didn't point at the camera. He came out, put his hands on his hips, stood there with a blank expression, waited for Ricky to say his piece, and then left. Wahoo McDaniel versus Vernon Deaton.
I love that the graphic guy gets it right every single week.
McDaniel.
Wahoo McDaniel. And David Crockett always calls him Wahoo McDaniels, as does everybody else.
And by the way,
why didn't they just call him Wahoo McDaniels?
I don't know.
Why did they even bother? I guess because he was famous. But
by this point, yes. The funniest thing about that is David loved Wahoo. He just didn't love him enough to learn his name.
all right, let me ask you a serious question that is a little more modern. Steve Mongo McMichael. Mm-hmm. Everybody called him Steve McMichaels. I mean, he was a famous member of the Chicago Bears and a Super Bowl winning team.
Yeah.
If they would have brought him up and just called him Steve McMichaels, would anybody have fucking noticed? Because probably most people called him Steve McMichaels anyway, right?
To be honest, that was before my time, but I can tell you, there was a guy who played for Atlanta named Keith Brooking. He played in the league for like 10 years. And 9 times out of 10, the announcers would call him Keith Brookings. I don't know why people do this.
Because you just can't help it.
So Steve Regal had joined the company, not Lord Steven Regal.
No, Lard Steve.
Brian.
He wasn't fat.
No.
He just was
was actually a shame because that's a great nickname.
He was definitely not Steve Regal.
No. He put over Jimmy Garvin, he buried Wahoo, and then he left. They'll do this sometimes in the show where someone will come out and cut a promo that has nothing to do with them.
No, he was a friend of Jimmy Garvin, and he says that Jimmy's going to come take care of this Indian.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And they left. And they said, well, Regal and Garvin are good friends. That's understating it. Regal and Garvin beat the Road Warriors to win the AWA tag titles. So, yes, they were very good friends.
Now, can I just talk about this match?
Sure.
What happened was, Wahoo played around with him for a while. He put him in various holds. And then, suddenly, he just began chopping the shit out of him. And then, instead of dropping an elbow, he did everything you would do when dropping an elbow. But instead of dropping an elbow, he chopped his face and pinned him. That was fucking amazing.
Here's everything I wrote about the match. They were out there doing nothing, and then Wahoo hit a bunch of chops and a falling chop for the win.
Yeah.
Okay.
I liked it.
Then came something awesome.
This was the best. And you know what? It was everyone we've ever seen. But I don't know. I guess because they just shot it straight, it made it 1,000 times better. There isn't like the irony nowadays where the guys do the thing and they just go, well, you know, there's going to be a fight here before this is all said and done, blah, 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 blah. These men went in here for a very professional contract signing for Magnum versus Nikita Koloff. Magnum brought his mother.
Yes.
And they played it straight.
So here's what went down. This was, per the Russians' demands, the press conference to hype up the title match, the U.S. Championship match between Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff. So Magnum's there, like all Americans, blue jeans, black T-shirt.
Mom.
His mother, did they identify her until halfway through?
No.
Okay.
First I thought it must be his attorney.
That's what I thought too. It was his
Yeah.
management or something. There was a mystery woman sitting to his right.
Maybe she is his attorney. We don't know.
Could be. There was, it was Sandy Scott moderating, right?
Yes.
Yes. And then the Russians are on the other side. Now, I mentioned Magnum's outfit of blue jeans and T-shirt. The Russians showed up to this press conference in white suits. And not to be outdone, Nikita Koloff, white shirt, white jacket, white slacks, white shoes, no socks.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. So Sandy hands Magnum the contract, and Magnum cannot sign this quickly enough.
No, he didn't even read it.
Flips to the back where his name is supposed to go, signs it, scribbles, passes it back.
That's right. It could have been a contract for, like, his firstborn child. He didn't give a shit.
A pound of flesh.
Just signed it.
So then they pass it over to the Russians. Ivan goes line by line, clause by clause through this thing. And then you notice something very funny about this.
Yeah.
I was typing. I would like glance up the screen, listen, type. And I could hear Ivan saying, yes, this looks good. Yes, that is our demands.
June 7.
And then you rewound. I couldn't figure out why. And you asked, why did they dub that? I didn't know what you meant. And then we went back, and as Ivan is speaking, his lips don't move.
No. I think what happened, I think they filmed this, and I think that Ivan wanted to do a deal where he very carefully read over each line of the contract to make it seem like this is a very serious matter. I want to make sure these Americans aren't fucking me.
Well, not only that, but it's a note of cowardice. Magnum couldn't wait to sign. Ivan was almost looking for an excuse to get out.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, regardless, he goes through it, and I'll bet when it was over, they thought, well, you know, we want to get that spot in there, but fuck, it took him a long time to read that goddamn contract.
15 seconds of a bald man flipping the pages of a contract.
So let's have him do some audio, and we'll dub it in.
Yes.
And we'll hope that Brian Alvarez isn't paying attention.
In 2016.
2016. Well, I was fucking paying attention, and it was weird. It's like I was reading his mind.
I prefer to think we could hear his thoughts. He's a telepath now. So he finally approves the contract. He passes it to nephew Nikita. Nephew Nikita signs. And then Sandy says, I understand the Russians have a prepared statement. And Ivan runs his mouth for a while, and it's the usual thing we've been hearing for 6 months now.
On June 7th, on the Superstation at WTBS, you will see my nephew, a superior athlete. I wrote, you will feat my nephew. You will face my nephew? I don't know how I got face and feet mixed up. Anyway, he's going to defeat you for the U.S. title.
Yes. And it's Nikita's turn. And I finally, for the first time, understood what Nikita was saying in a promo, and thank goodness. So Nikita wants to know why Magnum had chosen to bring his mother to a contract signing.
This is a goddamn good question.
Fantastic question.
Unless
what is
she
your
is
mom
his
doing
attorney,
here?
why is she there?
So he begins to talk about how Russian women know their place. They don't belong in matters like contract negotiations. They belong at home, in the kitchen, cleaning, all that stuff. And he says, this proves that Russian women have more class than a stinking American. A word of advice. Don't insult Magnum TA's mother to his face. Magnum scrambles over the top of the table. There is no, like, stand up in a big dramatic flip. There's no moment of reaction. He goes from 0 to 100 in an instant.
Yeah.
He is a wild animal. He's getting over the table to kill this Russian who has said bad things about his mom.
Now, as he goes over this table, Sandy Scott had been between them. Sandy Scott ends up on the ground, and there is a chair on top of him. and he is buried and trapped.
Yes.
And nobody else gives a shit.
No.
The Russians double team and destroy Nikita, and Sandy Scott is struggling to unbury himself the entire time. I laughed so hard at Sandy Scott being buried underneath the chair in the middle of this brawl.
Yeah. So the Magnum reacted so quickly, he did not have time to think this through. There was two of them and one of him, and it ended up with them beating him up and leaving him laying in front of his mom.
Oh, man.
Genius.
This segment fucking ruled. That's all I gotta say.
All I gotta say is, there's better yet to come. It was not Shaska Whatley versus Bill Mulkey. I love this. Okay. Shaska's in the ring doing a squash match.
It was not Shaska Whatley versus Bill Mulkey?
Well, that's what it was, but this is not the better I was speaking of.
I see.
They're in the ring doing a squash match. Meanwhile, Paul Jones and occasionally Baron Von Raschke are at the podium doing a promo, which they show on the screen on the inset box, little box in the corner. So let me describe for you what is actually on camera, because they go to the match with a wide shot. So the top half of the screen is just the flags they hang at the top of the studio to make this look international. The lower right-hand corner of the screen is empty ring, where there's no match happening. And the lower left-hand corner of the screen is Shaska Whatley and Bill Mulkey doing stuff behind the inset screen of Paul Jones's head. And as you noted, Paul Jones by now has been doing this for a long time.
Let me talk about Paul Jones. He's doing commentary, and they've got an inset. Everybody, you've got to go watch this. First off, Paul Jones, I think, knew that he was on screen because he's desperately trying to figure out where he's supposed to be looking. He looks right, he looks left, he looks up, he looks down, he looks towards this camera, he looks towards the other camera. He has no idea where he's supposed to be looking. Then, I think he thought the camera was no longer on him because he appears to go out of character for a moment. Then, somebody must have said and made some sort of motion like, you're fucking on camera, dude.
The camera motion, everyone.
Yeah. Because then all of a sudden he goes back into character again, and he starts shouting that Bill Mulkey is such a coward because he's outside of the ring. And he screams, "This man must be from this area." That's what he came up with.
Yes. Not Atlanta, not Georgia.
He must be from
not the mid-Atlantic.
this area.
Fighting words.
Paul Jones. Can we take Robert Gibson out of the Hall of Fame and put Paul Jones in as Ricky Morton's partner in the Rock and Roll Express?
Why not?
Then we'd kill two birds with one stone.
Correct a
with my
lot of
plan.
wrongs. Shaska won with a superplex.
God, Paul Jones. He's like so bad, he's amazing.
Ric Flair came out for a promo. And the first half of this was basically every Flair promo you ever saw. He noted he had his custom-made suit, looking like only he can look, and looking a lot better than Ricky Morton. Said as good as he looked, he could still fight dirty, and that's what he had to be world champion. And he put the Horseman over, and Arn's the TV champion, Tully's the national champion. Always coming back. And it's very generic Ric Flair promo, which is very good, but nothing you haven't heard before. And then he stops, and David Crockett has backed away and wants nothing to do with this after they're attacking Ricky Morton. And Flair turns to David Crockett and says, "David, I can tell you guys something to say. Why don't you ask me a question?" Crockett steps up and quietly, solemnly asks, "Why did it take four of you?"
That's his question.
Yeah. And Flair laughs and says, "You think it took four of us to beat up Ricky Morton?" He says, "Go back and watch. I had things well in hand, and Tully and Arn showed up to congratulate me on my victory, and they were only there to do that until Morton attacked them." That's so awesome. Because that is so clearly a lie. But it makes it great.
I love when he said, they wanted to know, why did you do this to Ricky? You attacked this man, you beat the shit out of him, and you shattered his nose. Why? What makes you think that you had the right to do that to Ricky Morton? And Ric Flair's response was, I did that to Ricky Morton because Ricky had the audacity to think that for even one day in his life, he could be half the man that I am. That was his entire justification.
Oh, yeah.
Ricky Morton thought on one day that he could be half the man I am. Therefore, he deserved for me to beat his ass and break his nose.
And finally, he says, I guess to prove he's not all bad, he has a gift for Ricky and Ricky's fans. And he pulls out a bikini that he says would fit the typical Ricky Morton fan. And he pulls out a bikini that I believe your daughter Paisley may have outgrown already.
Oh, I wrote that same thing. It's too small for Paisley.
Yes.
There's no way she would have fit into this.
No.
I don't even know where he got it.
A Barbie doll.
Had to have been custom
An
made.
actual, literal Barbie doll. And then it got better. I could talk for, I think, 3 hours about this Tully Blanchard promo. J.J. Dillon and Tully Blanchard come out for a promo, and they are giddy. They can't wait to show and tell everyone how great they are and how they bettered their enemy. They're bragging about Tully Blanchard being the first man to ever knock Ronnie Garvin out. And they go to video. It's at what would now be called a live event. It's going to be Ronnie Garvin versus Leo Burke, who they claim many times a Canadian Golden Gloves champion.
Very important to note that.
So before the match can start, out comes Dillon and Tully Blanchard, who was in street clothes and his arms in a sling. And they're talking, by the way, they always have a backup. They always have a plan and a backup plan and a backup plan for the backup plan. So they come out to interrupt this match or delay this match. And I'm not quite sure. I guess their first plan was Leo Burke would actually knock Ronnie Garvin out on his own, perhaps with their moral support. They go to the floor, and they go to watch the match. And Leo Burke gets his ass kicked by Ronnie Garvin.
Plan A failed.
Plan A did fail. So they go to the backup plan, which is the ref gets bumped. Dillon hits the ring to try to knock Garvin out with a loaded shoe. Oh, that's right. That's what the Blanchard and Dillon were there to talk about Ronnie Garvin's knockout power, and they dared him and Burke to face each other in a knockout match. You must win by knockout or submission. That's what happened. See, so much was going on, I forgot to write that down. All right, so the ref gets bumped. Dillon goes to the backup plan. He goes to hit Ronnie Garvin with his shoe. Garvin ducks. Dillon KOs Burke. And Garvin then shoves Dillon into Blanchard, who had been on the apron and then went flying. So the ref counts Burke out. Gives him a 10 count. He's knocked out. Garvin wins. So plan A failed, plan B failed, it's time to go to plan C. And Blanchard hits the ring. He tears off his sling. Guess what? His arm's not broken. And his fist is all taped up. Just like Ronnie Garvin had his fist taped up for months, and the Horseman claimed it was unfair and gave him an unfair advantage. So he jumps Ronnie Garvin, and he's managed to beat the fuck out of this man with his taped fist. And as the video is showing him punch the snot out of Garvin with his taped fist, he's in the studio screaming, squealing, and quoting Dusty Rhodes. It's just tape. It's just athletic tape you can buy at any store. It's just tape like you see in every sport. Nothing to complain about. It's totally fair. And he punches him and punches him and punches him. And also, by the way, as he's showing this beating, he says Ronnie Garvin likes to call himself the Hands of Stone. You know what? There's another man who called himself Hands of Stone, a boxer named Roberto Duran. You know what he's most famous for? In a fight against Sugar Ray Leonard, he said, no mas. He quit. He quit. And here I'm beating up Handsy Stone Ronnie Garvin, and I hit him with my pile driver, and as I'm standing over him, no one else could hear this, but I could hear him whisper. And Ronnie Garvin looked up at me and whispered, I quit. Over and over and over again. As he was stretchered out, there's nothing Magnum TA could do about that, nothing Dusty Rhodes could do about that. I knocked out Ronnie Garvin, I made him say I quit. This should be required viewing for everyone who enjoys wrestling in any way. This was a masterpiece from start to finish. This was brilliant. This was fantastic. This is mandatory for you to see.
Now, here's my question. I realize that he was Ricky Morton's tag team partner. But how is Robert Gibson in the Hall of Fame and fucking Tully Blanchard is not?
I don't know.
This man is fucking amazing. Promo ability, working ability, everything. God, he's great. Every single week he's awesome.
This was the best.
This was amazing.
This was I'm still blown away by how fantastic that was. Note perfect from start to finish. Midnight Express versus Art Pritz and Brody Chase. Ray Traylor has now joined Jim Cornette as a bodyguard named Big Bubba Rogers.
That's right.
No reference that this man has was on a 14-match losing streak, whatever it is. He's just a new guy.
Not even that. But later, Jim Cornette explains, this man has been a childhood friend.
That's true.
He has protected me, protected my mother. He always, if we ever have a problem, we just call Big Bubba Rogers. They have totally repackaged a total jobber because they found out he was a very, very talented jobber. So Big Bubba has taken the leap.
Yeah.
Congratulations to him.
It is great. So Cornette's out there hyping up bunkhouse matches against the James Boys, and the Midnight Express won with the skull-crushing finale and the top rope elbow. And the only other notable thing is that Brody Chase so royally screwed up taking the skull-crushing finale, and Condrey just scowled at him, and I thought this man was doomed, but they just hit the elbow and pinned him. Then they all joined Jim Cornette for another promo. I guess the same promo, just kept on going. Here's where he explained Big Bubba had been doing dirty work for Mama Cornette. If they needed a debt collected.
I do want to say very quickly before you get to that the great Bobby Eaton was fucking phenomenal on this show. He's always great, but he was flying all over the place. He was awesome here in this random squash match against Art Pritz and Brody Chase.
Indeed.
God, he was great.
So they explain who Big Bubba is. They move on to the James Boys. This, of course, is who Big Bubba is there to protect Cornette from. Then they show the clip that opened the show in its entirety. Now, as you noted, this all started when a masked team named the James Boys surprised the Midnight Express and beat them in a match.
That's right.
So here they are. They claim it's Dusty and Magnum under masks, and they've been told if they can prove that, then Dusty and Magnum will be suspended for an undetermined amount of time. So they attack the James Boys.
After the James Boys had won.
I believe they're fighting the Mulkeys. I'm not sure. But they attack the James Boys. They're tearing them apart. They get one in the ring. They're working together, all three of them, to get his mask off. And they finally tear it off. And it's Tony Zane.
Tony Zane.
Because as you noted, it now appears, or at least we are led to believe, that Tony Zane was one of the men under the masks that beat the Midnight Express.
That's right.
Dusty and Magnum hit the ring unmasked, just to laugh at these men for believing they could ever be the James Boys. Come on now, that's just silly. They go back to the studio, and Cornette is throwing a tantrum. He is crying.
It was so great. Everything that you talked about with Tully Blanchard and how they were so happy to have gotten their revenge with their plan A, B, and C. This was the exact opposite. The heel had such a diabolical plan. We're going to sneak in after these idiots win a squash match, and we're going to unmask them. We're going to do a 3-on-1, unmask them, and show the world it's really Dusty Rhodes and his partner Magnum TA. And they fucking go in there, and they unmask the guy, and it's Tony Zane. Now, we know, and Cornette knows, and the whole world knows who the James Boys really are. But Cornette had been outsmarted, and he is fucking furious.
Oh, yeah.
He's so angry that we all fucking know who they are. It doesn't matter that when I unmasked him, it was Tony Zane. We know who they... And he's purple.
The whole world's against me, he screams.
He's purple with rage.
Yes. He's crying, he's screaming, he's ranting, and out comes Baby Doll.
Yes.
And she's giving them a wide berth. She's not in their space necessarily, but as soon as they see her, they have to hold Jim Cornette back. They grab him. And Baby Doll explains she has a challenge. If Cornette thinks he's so tough, he can put some tights on, she'll put some tights on, and we'll see who's the best at the Great American Bash. She leaves. Cornette accepts this immediately, vowing no woman would ever beat a man in a wrestling match.
His exact quote was, "No woman in the world can beat a man in a wrestling match. You want me in the ring, you fat hog, you got it."
Yes.
Wow.
They go to commercial. They come back, and Jimmy Garvin and Precious are out there for a promo. And Jimmy begins running down Baby Doll, calls her a loose woman, as he has in the past, a Jezebel, as he has in the past. And then he had a new comment when he said, she's like a cumulus nimbus cloud.
Cool.
He says, Wahoo McDaniel has gone insane and gotten goofier. Claimed Wahoo had been cruising his neighborhood and peeking in windows. And then things got uncomfortable. And he said, if back in the day, if you didn't pick enough cotton, they tied you to a tree and they whipped you. Ouch. Awkward. I'm not sure how it applies to Wahoo. But Jimmy's delivery in this promo was fantastic. The Rock and Roll Express defeated David Dellinger and Paul Garner with a double drop kick in 4 seconds.
Yep.
The Russians cut a promo.
They actually showed a replay of the double drop kick.
I guarantee you that replay took more time than the actual
That was the
bell to
point,
bell.
because
Yes.
the replay was in slow motion. It was longer than the match itself.
Yes. The Russians cut a promo. They vowed that Crusher Khrushchev would return soon. Ivan said Magnum had insulted them by bringing a woman to such an important event as their contract signing. And then Nikita mumbled for a while. Baron Von Raschke and the Barbarian versus Italian Stallion and Rocky King.
There was something in this match we'd never seen before.
I've seen it one other time. I'm pretty sure one other time in my life. The Barbarian picked up Rocky King and hit a one-handed press slam.
Yeah.
The only other time that I can remember seeing this, it was the Big Show doing it to Rey Mysterio.
Yes.
These two men are much closer in size.
This is why I always loved the Barbarian and Meng when they were together. Just big, powerful dudes, and you know, there's a technique to lift a man.
Sure.
If you want to see the technique to lift a man, watch Jason Jordan. He will show you the proper technique to lift and throw a man. Barbarian will show you how to not do it properly, but still execute it
If you're so
in the
damn
ugliest
strong,
manner
it doesn't
possible.
matter, yeah.
I'm just going to catch you in whatever cattywampus way that I catch you, and then I'm going to fucking throw you. That's what he did.
Uh-huh.
He was so strong.
He picked up King for this press slam and quickly realized, I don't need both hands to do this, and he put his hand down. And he held him up there and he slammed him. The other big spot was Baron's new gimmick is he's got a mystery glove, which he uses to he puts it on, hits one punch, and then takes it back off. And then Barbarian wins with a diving headbutt.
Should mention that during this match, they put on the screen that they had a Great American Bash hotline number.
Oh, yeah.
A special hotline that you could call to get all of the information about the Great American Bash Tour 1986. They bleep out the number, but they do leave on the screen the information that you can only call from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern.
If you are in Los Angeles and it's 2:25 and you want Bash tickets, tough luck.
They didn't have a fucking answering machine or a voice mail of some sort in 1986. You actually had to call and talk to a human being to
guess
get
so.
all the information you wanted about the Great American Bash.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Thank God I'm not that old yet.
Well, on that note, it was time for the Great American Bash update. They showed a skydiver landing in a field, I guess from the year before. They're at a packed outdoor stadium show, and there's skydivers and fireworks and all the country music stars, everything they promised. They have a message from NWA President Bob Geigel for Ric Flair, and really for everyone. Explains the Bash is going to be a 14-city tour. And on this tour, Ric Flair is going to defend the title on every single show.
That's right.
14 title defenses in 30 days, he says. A grueling schedule for any champion.
And then they have a big question. Flair is going to defend the title 14 times in 30 days. Very difficult, even for a champion as great as Ric Flair.
Sure.
What happens if someone beats Flair for the title?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Because they explained it here. They said if anyone is fortunate enough to defeat Ric Flair and win the World Heavyweight Championship, they will take on the burden of those title defenses, and they will headline the rest of the tour,
Wow.
defending as they go.
Shocking.
Yeah.
You know, Bob Geigel lived to be 90 years old. He just died like a year and a half ago. Good for him.
That's very good for him. And he said this is going to be a great event, a great tour. He congratulated Jim Crockett on putting together such a marvelous tour. Ron Garvin defeated Kent Glover in 30 seconds with a knockout punch. And then Cornette returned for another promo. First, he's got more to say about Baby Doll. He repeats, no woman, not even a big fat woman like Baby Doll, can wrestle a man. He vows he's going to send her to the kitchen. And he starts talking about how big and scary Bubba was. And then he turns his wrath on Bob Geigel. Because sure, Geigel's got all kinds of things to say, all nice words when you're talking about skydivers and rock stars and fireworks and baseball stadiums. But when it comes to doing his damn job and suspending and firing people, he's nowhere to be seen. And he's ranting and ranting and ranting. He's just on a roll. And finally, Schiavone has to pull the mic away and say, we'll see you next week. And Cornette slaps the podium and says, yes, we will.
God, what a great show.
This may have the one Christmas show that had like the Flair Garvin match, that was the best of these shows we've watched. This may have been the second best.
Hey,
This was great.
excellent, excellent show. And I would suspect as we head into the Great American Bash Tour, we'll have a bunch of other great shows as well. One